Hello everyone, a very good evening and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep. Welcome to our weekly current affairs webinar. Unfortunately, this session was supposed to be held last week itself on last Thursday, but as I was not keeping well, we had to cancel it at the last minute. So apologies for the inconvenience. So today we shall conduct this webinar which is specifically related to the current affairs developments from international relations. In this session, we shall be talking about around 8 important topics from international relations that were in news over the last few weeks. First, let us start by looking at the topics that we are going to discuss. Let me introduce you to which topics we'll be covering today, and then we'll start one by one. There are 8 important topics, as I mentioned, that deals with India's relations with its neighboring countries. There are some important global issues that took place as well in the last few weeks. So all these topics we will cover in detail, both from a prelims and as well as from a mains point of view. So let's begin with the first topic related to Pakistan. Pakistan has been providing fresh support for cross-border infiltration of terrorists into Jammu and Kashmir, particularly in the Poonch-Rajouri sector. Essentially, we are witnessing a new tactic by Pakistan-sponsored terrorists to target India. So this development acquires a lot of significance, not just with regard to international relations, but also with regard to internal security. Because as you know, Jammu and Kashmir has been affected by insurgency and terrorism from more than 3 decades. And Pakistan has been right behind this campaign to sponsor terrorism against India. But in the last few years, especially the last 2 years, we have seen this new trend where the hub of terrorism has shifted from the Kashmir Valley towards the Jammu sector. Generally, in the last 2 to 3 decades, terrorism was mainly concentrated towards the Kashmir Valley. I'll show you a map as well to explain which areas were infested with terrorism in the last many decades. But over the last 1.5 to 2 years, we are witnessing a clear shift in the tactics being adopted by these terrorists. They've shifted their base of operations, their primary target area towards the Jammu region, towards the Jammu sector. So why is this happening? What could be the reason behind it? How does this affect India? And what can India do? What can India do? What measures can we take to tackle the threat of terrorism that emanates from Pakistan? This is what we will analyze and discuss in this particular topic. Now, the reason why this topic is in news is because in December, in the last week of December, there were few unfortunate developments in Jammu and Kashmir. There was a terror attack in the Poonch region where around 4 soldiers of the Indian Army were killed by Pakistan-backed terrorists. Following this incident, a few local civilians were picked up by a local army unit, and few days later, their dead bodies were found with mutilation marks on their body. So this led to serious allegations that Indian Army soldiers had committed atrocities. They had committed human rights violations that led to the death of civilians. Around 8 locals had been picked up by a local Indian Army unit following this terrorist attack. And as a result, they found the bodies of around 5 local civilians. 3 of them were dead, 2 were seriously injured, and even the other 3 members who were released, even they bore injury marks on their bodies. So this led to prima facie allegations that Indian Army soldiers had broken the law. They'd taken matters into their own hands and committed human rights violations. So this serious incident triggered a lot of outrage. It led to protests, and the Indian Army started acting against the complaint. It has ordered an internal inquiry. The defense minister and the army chief visited the region as well, and they even almost admitted that yes, it appears that wrong things have been committed by some rogue soldiers of the Indian Army. So this was the incident that took place. So while the investigations are going on, there is an internal inquiry going on into these deaths of 3 civilians in the Poonch region. Parallelly, something else was pointed out by many experts, security and strategic experts. They pointed out that of late, Indian Army is suffering a lot of losses in the Jammu region, in the Poonch, Rajouri region. According to these experts, the number of terror attacks, which involves cross-border infiltration of terrorists, meaning these terrorists are coming from POK, from Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, where Pakistan is giving complete support to these terrorists. So they're infiltrating across the LOC, the line of control, into these parts of Jammu and carrying out these major attacks. And in the last 12 to 15 months, we have noticed that the Indian Army has suffered more losses than the terrorists. We have lost many soldiers of the Indian Army. They have been martyred. And the number of losses for the Indian Army is higher compared to even the number of terrorists that we have been able to neutralize. So this setback for the Indian Army in the Poonch Rajouri sector is indeed very alarming. It is concerning. It clearly points to a new trend, a new tactic being adopted by the terrorists and by Pakistan as well to create new challenges for India and to destabilize Jammu and Kashmir further. It's in this context we need to examine this topic in detail. We have to understand the nature of cross-border terrorism that Pakistan has sponsored against India. We should look at the new trends, the new tactics being adopted, and understand why this is happening and what threat does it pose to India and how can India counter these risks. So first, let's begin with a map of the region. You cannot understand this topic without looking at a detailed map. You can look at the map of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh over here, the two union territories which were created in 2020. Right? In 2019, the erstwhile state of J&K, it was reorganized into two new union territories, and the special status of J&K under Article 370 was revoked as well. Following this, the two new union territories were set up, and here you can see in this map, you can see the line of control as well, the LOC. This red line is the temporary de facto border between India and Pakistan. Now, historically, if you look at the history of insurgency and terrorism in Jammu and Kashmir, the hot spot of terrorism has always been the Kashmir region. When I say Kashmir region, I'm referring to the Kashmir Valley, which is located to the north of the Pir Panjal range. See, this mountain range, which I'm marking here in the map, that runs across the LOC, it essentially divides the Jammu and Kashmir region. To the north of Pir Panjal mountains, you have the Kashmir Valley. That's where Srinagar and other important locations like Uri, Pulwama, all these important places are located to the north of Pir Panjal range. This is the Kashmir region, the Kashmir Valley. To the south of Pir Panjal, you have the Jammu sector, which includes places like Poonch, Rajouri that you see here in the map. Now, if you look at the history of insurgency and terrorism that Pakistan has sponsored against India, terrorists have primarily relied on infiltrating into India across the LOC, and they have primarily targeted places like Srinagar, Baramulla, Uri, and even places as far away as Shopian, Budgam, Kulgam, Anantnag, etc. So these locations which I have marked, which are all located to the north of Pir Panjal, they have been the hotspots of terrorism historically. But now we are looking at a new trend. In fact, it's not entirely new, because even in the 1990s, Pakistan had attempted something similar. We are seeing a recurrence of this. What we have witnessed is that instead of focusing towards the north of Pir Panjal, that is the Kashmir Valley, the focus of terrorism has shifted towards the Poonch Rajouri division, which is much closer to the line of control. If you observe the map, places like Poonch and Rajouri, which are part of the Jammu sector, located to the south of Pir Panjal, that is closer to LOC compared to even the Kashmir Valley, compared to places like, let's say, Budgam, Anantnag, etc. So this is one important trend which we are coming across in the last 12 to 15 months. The last 1.5 years has seen more attacks happening in the Poonch Rajouri sector even as compared to the Kashmir sector. So this is the important critical observation that many experts have raised, which has been pointed out by the Indian Army as well, and even by the Home Ministry, the Defense Ministry as well. The focus of terrorism has shifted to the south of Pir Panjal, from Kashmir Valley towards the Jammu sector. So this is quite alarming for India. So now the question is, why is this happening? Why is Pakistan adopting this new tactic? Are there any advantages for Pakistan by adopting this new tactic in pushing terrorism against India? Are there any major concerns for India with regard to the security of J&K? Right? This is what we need to address. Now, please look at the key points that I have taken from many different research articles and newspaper articles. The reason why the Pir Panjal region, the south of Pir Panjal, has seen a spike in terror attacks is mainly because of the geography of the region and also the demography of the region. These two factors are playing a direct role with regard to the new focus of these terrorists. Because see, towards the north of Pir Panjal, you have very high altitude areas that get covered with snow during the winter season. In the Kashmir Valley, many areas become inaccessible for humans. It becomes inhospitable due to the extremely low temperatures, constant snowfall, and the hazardous conditions present during the winter months. So for terrorists and for Pakistan, this is a disadvantage. Because when there is heavy snowfall during winters, they cannot continue with their infiltration from across the LOC. They can't step up their attacks against India. So historically, we have seen that during winter months, terrorism would go down in Kashmir. Terrorism would automatically decline because of the natural factors, the geographical factors. But this is not the case in the Jammu division. In the Poonch Rajouri sector, to the south of Pir Panjal, the geographical factors are different. Even here you have high altitude mountainous areas, but they are densely forested. It's a hilly topography that you find in the Poonch Rajouri division. And snowfall is relatively less even during the winters. So these hilly mountainous paths, they are open even during winter. Even during the winter months, the terrorists can easily sneak across the LOC, which is very close to this area. It's in close proximity to the line of control. They can easily infiltrate across the LOC and they can trek these hilly mountains, which are also densely forested. It's a densely forested area. There are large boulders present with natural caves. Now, how is this relevant for terrorists? This is relevant because they can easily hide. They can camouflage themselves. Even if they are detected by the Indian Army, they can hide in these natural caves, take cover under these boulders, hide their weapons, and thus they can effectively infiltrate into the Indian side and mount major attacks, not just against the Indian Army, but even against local civilians. So the geographical factors have played a direct role in the adoption of this new tactic. We had seen this in 1990s as well, where Poonch Rajouri division had become the focus of Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, and now we are seeing a repeat of this. Is that clear? In the south of Pir Panjal, the border is also very porous here because of the forested region and the hilly mountainous terrain that is present. When there is no snowfall, it's easy for the terrorists to trek, to cross the rivers and the ravines and even hide and take shelter. Understood? And even the local demography plays a role here. Because once the terrorists sneak in, they will need some kind of local support, or else they can't survive and sustain for many days. Without local support, it is impossible. In the Poonch Rajouri region, the terrorists can actually rely on some local support. Why? Because there are a lot of ethnic similarities between the people found here in the Poonch Rajouri region and the people found across the LOC in POK. They look similar, they dress the same way, they eat the same food, their culture practices are similar. More importantly, their language is similar. But in Kashmir, things are different. Most Kashmiris, they speak the Kashmiri language. So POK terrorists, if they sneak into Kashmir Valley, sometimes they get spotted and they easily are targeted by the Indian Army. But here in Poonch Rajouri region, if they get even some local support, they can easily conceal themselves, hide themselves, create a safe haven, and carry out these attacks against Indian forces. And also there are other minority communities present here, like the Gujars, Bakarwals, and other minority groups present here, some of whom might be sponsored by Pakistan. They might be lured by money. Pakistan's ISI, which is waging this secret war against India, might use money to lure some locals to support the terrorists who are sneaking through. Or some local community members might hold a grudge against the Indian state because of the constant security presence, incidents of human rights violations, and the changes that have happened, the constitutional political changes that have happened with regard to J&K, the lack of development, could all become a trigger for some locals to have resentment against the Indian state. And some of them might start backing Pakistan or start working for Pakistan. So the presence of some element of local support also is playing a role in the Poonch Rajouri region. So by taking the help of geography and the local demography, Pakistan is more conveniently pushing terrorists into the Poonch Rajouri sector. And it has mounted major attacks, not just against Indian Army soldiers, but even local civilians are being targeted. Local civilians are being targeted in the border villages. Is that clear? Especially there is an attempt to target minority groups, particularly religious minorities. This is again a repeat of 1990s. If you remember, or if you have studied about it, you would know that Pakistan used terrorists to target Kashmiri Pandits in the Kashmir Valley to create a communal divide between Hindus and Muslims and to turn the Kashmir issue into a communal issue, which destabilized India. So we are seeing another attempt where terrorists are specifically targeting local villagers, especially people from minority communities, religious minorities. Even migrant workers who are present in this region, in the Jammu region, they are being targeted. There have been targeted attacks against them. So this is something that really worries India. So there could be some element of local support. There could be some local sympathizers, or in many cases, we have seen that locals have been forced by the terrorists to support them. They've been threatened. The terrorists threaten the families. They take their pictures, they take over their homes, and if they inform the security forces or pass intelligence, the family will be eliminated. So they take shelter with the family itself, use their own phones to make contact with their handlers in Pakistan and to get instructions from Pakistan. So all these trends have been noted by Indian intelligence agencies and the security forces which are operating in Jammu and Kashmir. So this shift of focus from Kashmir towards the Jammu region, towards Poonch Rajouri region, is of serious concern for India. And also please understand that as Jammu region had become more stable in the last 20 years, even the focus of Indian Army and the security agencies had gone down in the Poonch Rajouri division. A lot of troops had been moved more towards the Kashmir region and even towards Ladakh, especially as the crisis with China began along the line of actual control. Right? Since 2020, we are involved with a border clash with China. So as these tensions escalated, some troops were redeployed from the LOC towards the LAC. Because here the Northern Command, which is headquartered at Udhampur in J&K, right? The Northern Command of the Indian Army is responsible for guarding both the borders with Pakistan and China. So as the threat of Pakistani terrorism had declined slightly, especially towards Jammu, and a new crisis erupted in Ladakh towards China, some troops were redeployed and the focus of our security and intelligence agencies also has shifted a little towards the Chinese border. So now Pakistan is exploiting this. The dilution in the security grid in the Poonch Rajouri region has weakened our preparedness, which has been exploited by Pakistan. Because in Kashmir, India is always extremely vigilant. The intelligence agencies, the Indian Army and all the security forces are extremely vigilant in Kashmir, especially after Article 370 was removed. So Definitely in Kashmir region, acts of terrorism has gone down comparatively. But in the Jammu region, it has gone up significantly as Pakistan is exploiting all these advantages. There are geographical advantages, demographic advantages, and the lack of focus as well from Indian forces towards this region has created the right opportunity for Pakistan to exploit. Now, along with this, there is another concern. There is an added concern here. The Indian Army and the intelligence agencies have noted the increased influx of foreign weapons and as well as foreign terrorists into Poonch and Rajouri. We have seen a higher influx of foreign made weapons and foreign terrorists into the Jammu region. This is also a contributing factor. So where are these weapons coming from? Where are these foreign terrorists coming from? They are coming primarily from the Afghanistan-Pakistan belt. Parallelly, what has happened in Afghanistan? In 2021, the US withdrew from Afghanistan. The US withdrew its troops, struck a peace deal with Taliban, and allowed the Taliban to take over power in Afghanistan. So following this, some of the Afghan and Pakistani terrorists who are controlled by the ISI, they have been diverted towards Kashmir, towards Jammu. We have noted an increased presence of foreign terrorists and an increased inflow of foreign weapons, high-grade weapons. For example, in some of the recent terror attacks, which killed Indian Army soldiers, steel core bullets were used. Bullets which have a steel core. They are specifically designed to pierce body armor. Is that clear? So even Indian Army soldiers who are wearing body armor, they lost their lives because their armors were breached by the steel core bullets. And where did these bullets come from? These are actually American bullets. Indian agencies have conducted thorough investigation to see whether these were Chinese-made bullets or American bullets. In most cases, it is American steel core bullets and advanced American ammunition which has landed in the hands of these terrorists, especially the foreign terrorists. Because after the withdrawal of the US, right, there has been a free flow of American weapons in the region. What they had left behind, it has fallen into the hands of terror groups. And Pakistan is diverting that supply of weapons and terrorists towards India. So instead of traditionally focusing on Kashmir, now it is using the opportunity in Jammu region and targeting this region here. And that is why India has suffered serious losses in the last couple of years. So this indeed represents a major security risk for India. Is that clear? Please understand, terrorism always takes the path of least resistance. Wherever there is minimal resistance, that is where the terrorists will focus upon. And least resistance was present in Poonch Rajouri because our security focus had slightly gone down. The border is porous. There are natural gaps present. The geography, terrain is very complex. Even during winter, the region is accessible. There is no snowfall. There are dense forests, boulders, natural caves available where the terrorists can hide. And there is some local support, either by sympathizers or by force, by threat. It's a combination of these factors which has led to the rise of terrorism in the Poonch Rajouri region. Is that clear? Now, the question is, what can India do? What is India doing to respond to this threat? India has already taken note of the new tactic, and we have stepped up our security and intelligence operations focused on the Jammu region as well. Along with maintaining our focus and vigilance towards Kashmir, even the Jammu sector has come under focus, and border security especially is being stepped up to keep a check on infiltration. India deploys a lot of technology to prevent cross-border infiltration. We use Earth observation satellites which serve a military purpose. They provide high-resolution pictures to track any movement in real time. We are using drones for surveillance. We have sensors on the ground, thermal and laser-based sensors to detect any cross-border movement. We even track any underground tunnels that are dug under the LOC from where the terrorists can sneak into India. So advanced technology is being deployed to improve border surveillance and border security. And all the concerned forces like BSF, of course, the Indian Army, which is engaged in counter-insurgency, counter-terrorist operations, even J&K police, and the intelligence agencies, IB and RAW, they're all working collectively to clamp down on the threat. In some of the recent incidents, even Enforcement Directorate, CBI, and of course NIA, which is the primary anti-terror agency, they've all been involved in arresting the sympathizers who gave the local support, in confiscating their property, in breaking the financing routes. So such strict action has been initiated already by India. We have improved local intelligence gathering. We are trying to gain some local support. And we even launched the village defense committees. Village defense committees were relaunched by the Home Ministry, through which the local villagers are being armed by India. This was a practice which we did in 1990s as well. When the threat of terrorism had gone up, India had set up these village defense guards who would be supplied weapons by Indian forces. They would be trained as well, and they can use the weapons in self-defense. If terrorists are targeting local villagers and minority groups, they could use the weapons to defend themselves. But later, this practice became controversial due to human rights violations, as several local villagers who had weapons, they had targeted others and committed human rights violations. So this practice had been stopped. Now recently, Home Ministry has revived this initiative. Now it's called Village Defense Committees. At the local village level, the locals are being armed by India. We are supplying weapons and giving training as well, so they can defend themselves. This is only for self-defense. That is, before the Indian forces can reach the site of an attack, local villagers can target the terrorists and counter them in order to defend the community. Is that clear? So these are the various measures that we have taken up, and Indian Army has already stepped up its vigilance and its counter-insurgency, counter-terrorist operations along the Poonch Rajouri region as well. So based on this important topic, you can expect mains questions in IR or maybe even in internal security. For example, a question like this can come in your exams. The recent upsurge in terror attacks in Jammu sector points towards new tactics being adopted by Pakistan-sponsored terrorists. Examine. So you have to approach this question holistically. Cover the points that I discussed comprehensively, provide this in a logical order. You can start by explaining how the new trend has been noticed, how more attacks are being witnessed in the Jammu sector, how Indian Army has suffered more losses. Then you can explain that traditionally it was Kashmir region which was a hotspot, but now we are seeing something, a repeat of 1990s, where Poonch Rajouri region has become the target. And you can explain all the factors, the geographical factors, demographic factors, draw a rough map as well, and show the proximity of this region to LOC, explain the complex terrain present here, right? And explain the influx of foreign weapons and terrorists as well from Afghanistan, Pakistan region. And that completes your answer. In the conclusion, you can talk about India's countermeasures, what India has done to counter the threat. So that completes your answer. So I hope the topic is clear. Now let us see if you have any doubts, any questions. Please let me know. See, these are all very dynamic topics, right? They keep evolving, they keep changing. You have to stay up to date constantly. All right. So that is why covering current affairs is very crucial, because questions based on these topics will all be based on current affairs. Whatever background you know, it will be useful. But by relying on that, you can't write an answer. Without current affairs, you can't answer such questions. So it's very important to understand these issues in complete detail. Even though it's a little complex, you have to get into the details, or else you won't be able to present your arguments. So let's see if there are any questions, any doubts. SMEs, can you push some of the good questions into the dismiss section? Please push a few questions into the dismiss section which have not been answered. Mohana is asking, what's the difference between border and boundary? Border and boundary are the same. And she's also asking, what's the difference between LOC and LAC? LOC is line of control, which is the temporary border we have with Pakistan in the Kashmir region. LAC is line of actual control, which is the temporary border we have with China in the Ladakh region. Mishra is asking, Pir Panjal divides Jammu and Kashmir, sir? Yes. The Pir Panjal mountain range, it divides Kashmir and Jammu. Kashmir is to the north of it, Jammu region is to the south of it. Ramya is asking, which agencies are involved in countering terror attacks? If you look at security forces, you have the Indian Army, of course. Indian Army is deployed here in a counter-terrorist role, right? Then you have BSF and CRPF responsible for internal security. BSF deals with border security, guards the LOC, and CRPF deals with internal situation in the Jammu and Kashmir region. Then you have Jammu and Kashmir police as well. And intelligence agencies like IB, RAW, they play a critical role, right? Then NIA, National Investigation Agency, which is the premier counter-terror agency of India, which is a law enforcement agency, also plays a critical role. So these are the various security agencies of India and forces which are involved in counter-terrorism. Aman is asking, sir, what is Rashtriya Rifles? Rashtriya Rifles, or RR, is a unit of the Indian Army which is deployed here in the Northern Command under Udhampur, right? That's where Northern Command is headquartered. And Rashtriya Rifles has the prime responsibility here to counter insurgency and terrorism. So RR is one of the key units of the Indian Army which is deployed here in Jammu and Kashmir. Ambesh is asking a very good question. Sir, can the act of these rogue officers worsen the situation in Jammu? You are absolutely right. If Indian forces are committing human rights violations, as it happened in December, then this is bad news for India. If Indian forces are involved in such violations, even if some rogue officers have done it, it brings a bad name to the whole Indian army, to the Indian state. This will create more anger and resentment amongst the local population. Even those who don't support Pakistan and the terrorists might be inclined towards supporting them if Indian forces and rogue officers are involved in carrying out such human rights violations. So it's very important in a conflict zone to ensure that our forces behave in a professional manner. That's why the army chief who visited the Poonch region after the attack, he made a very strong statement. He issued a public statement. He ordered his officers to behave professionally. Even Defense Minister Rajnath Singh made a similar statement. Now, this is very serious. You can understand if Defense Minister and Army Chief are publicly saying that the army has to behave professionally, you can understand that this incident is a real case of human rights violation by some rogue officers. These few officers have brought a bad name to the whole Indian army, right? And this weakens our fight against terrorism. It actually enables more support for terrorists and for Pakistan's covert war against India. So it's very important to prevent such human rights violations from happening. And those who are responsible, they should be delivered the strictest of punishment. Indian Army has already ordered an internal inquiry. It has suspended some of the officers. And once enough evidence is found against them, they will be tried and they will be delivered very strict punishment. Is that clear? Okay, one more question. Let me see if I'll be able to take one more question. Vivek is asking, sir, is this a repeat of attacks in J&K after 1990s? Is it in response to what has happened with Article 370? Definitely yes. The revocation of Article 370 has made a big change. Right now, J&K has become a union territory, meaning it's under the direct administration of the center. Center has a higher degree of control to deal with security incidents, to look after the development of J&K. So as a result, Pakistan is waiting for opportunities to step up terrorism against India. So since we are more vigilant in Kashmir, there was a gap in the Jammu region which is being exploited. So the trend you're witnessing in Jammu, right, where targeted attacks have happened against religious minorities, migrant workers, right? This is a result of the changes related to Article 370 as well. That is also one of the contributing factors. All right. So guys, these are some of the questions. Now let's proceed to the next topic. I have another interesting topic. Houthi attacks in Red Sea and the Arabian Sea. This has become another pressing issue in geopolitics, and it is having a big impact on India as well. As you know, Hamas, which is a Palestinian extremist outfit, carried out a brutal terror attack on 7th October against Israel. More than 1,000 Israelis were killed. Following this, Israel has launched a war against Gaza. Israel has sworn to wipe out Hamas, and it has pounded Gaza Strip. And more than 20,000 Palestinians have been killed, including innocent civilians, including women and children. So as this crisis continues in West Asia, there is something else happening in the region. There are other forces that have extended support to Palestine and to groups like Hamas. And this is destabilizing the whole region, which is having an impact on the security situation in West Asia. Now the impact has spread towards Arabian Sea, quite close to India's own coastline and India's exclusive economic zone. What happened is that in Yemen, which is a country located here in West Asia, there is a rebel group called the Houthis. It's an extremist outfit which is involved in a civil war since 2011-2014. The Houthi rebels have thrown out the Yemeni government, largely captured the country, and these Houthis are sponsored by Iran. Iran is their sponsorer. And Iran has intense rivalry with Israel. They are arch enemies of each other. Iran also allegedly sponsors Hamas against Israel. Hamas is also sponsored by Iran. Is that clear? So as Israel has targeted Hamas and launched a war in Gaza and committed several attacks in West Bank of Palestine as well, it's reported that Iran has retaliated by supporting other groups like Houthis and even Hezbollah from Lebanon. Hezbollah is another radical organization based out of Lebanon, located to the north of Israel. Right next to Syria, you have this country called Lebanon that faces the Mediterranean Sea. So there you have another radical group called Hezbollah, which is also a proxy of Iran. So Iran has many such proxy groups to target Israel. This is a result of their intense rivalry. Israel also targets Iran. It has tried targeting its nuclear program. It has assassinated top Iranian officials and scientists. And Iran retaliates by sponsoring these groups in the name of the Palestinian cause. So as Israel attacked Gaza, other Iranian groups have stepped up their attacks against Israel and Israeli interests in the region. So Hezbollah from Lebanon started carrying out attacks from the north. And similarly, the Houthis from Yemen started targeting ships in a strategic waterway. This map here is showing you a very critical sea lane of communication, meaning it's a trade route. A sea lane of communication is basically a trade route. A critical trade route in the region has been targeted by the Houthis, and commercial ships passing here have been targeted. Initially, attacks began against ships which are linked with Israel. Ships coming from Israel, going to Israel, or ships owned by Israeli companies and businesses. Such ships were being targeted initially by Houthi rebels. Now they have widened the attack and they have targeted other commercial ships as well, not just in the Red Sea, in the narrow Red Sea, but beyond this as well in the Arabian Sea. Now, this is a serious threat for every country in the world. It not only threatens Israeli interests or even American interests and interests of West Asia, it threatens the interests of every country in the world, because this could destabilize the global economy. Is that clear? Let me explain why. Now, if you observe this map, you can see this narrow trade route, which is absolutely crucial for sending goods from, let's say, Indian Ocean to Europe, or to procure goods from Europe to Indian Ocean. The only viable route, practical route, is this route. If, let's say, goods are being sent from a European port, all right, from Europe, the ship will pass across the Atlantic, enter the Mediterranean Sea. It will reach the Suez Canal in Egypt, the strategic Suez Canal. From here, the ship will pass into this narrow water body, that is the Red Sea. Is that clear? From here, the ships will head towards a choke point. This area, this is a choke point known as Bab el Mandeb. It's a strait. It's a very narrow strait, a narrow opening that connects Red Sea with Gulf of Aden. So the ships that are carrying the goods, they come through Red Sea, pass through this choke point, this strategic choke point, which is Bab el Mandeb, and then it reaches Gulf of Aden, then into Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. So this narrow shipping lane is of great global significance because 12% of the global trade passes through this route. Can you imagine that? 12% of global trade passing through just one trading route. Almost 12% of global oil shipments are passing through here. 8% of gas supplies are passing through this route. So it's not just oil and gas, even most commodities which are being sent from the Eastern Hemisphere to the Western Hemisphere, from North America to Asia, from Europe to India, right? From Africa to Europe. All the ships are passing through this route, carrying precious commodities, cargo, right? Along with oil and gas supplies. So this is quite literally the backbone of the global economy, a vital, critical shipping lane. Any such threat, any such risk for shipping will have a direct economic and geopolitical impact. Is that clear? So initially by October itself, October, November, as the Gaza war began, Houthi rebels from Yemen, they started launching drones and even missiles, which are essentially supplied by Iran to target Israeli ships. First, they fired few drones and missiles to Israel itself, towards Israel. They tried targeting a strategic Israeli port called the Port of Eilat, which is the only Israeli port opening to Red Sea. All right, can you see a narrow water body here? This is the Gulf of Aqaba. The Gulf of Aqaba is a very narrow opening which is surrounded by Israel, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt. All right, 4 countries are present around the Gulf of Aqaba. Aqaba is a coastal city in Jordan. It's a very important port of Jordan. Right next to Aqaba, you have Eilat, which is an Israeli city, a port city of Israel that opens to Gulf of Aqaba. So even Egypt and Saudi Arabia have ports here. This is their connection to Red Sea. That's where Israeli ships come towards Red Sea. Some ships coming from, let's say, ports like Haifa, they come into Mediterranean, into Suez Canal, and then into Red Sea. These Israeli ships were targeted initially. Then a few American, European ships were targeted. And eventually, every other ship is being targeted, including a few that were headed towards India. In the last couple of weeks, there was a ship coming from West Asia to Mangalore port. It was bringing oil supplies to India. It was hit by a drone, most likely launched by the Houthis. Another ship in the same region in the Arabian Sea was targeted as well with a ballistic missile. And these attacks happened very close to India's exclusive economic zone, quite close to India's EEZ. These attacks took place, and there was an attempted hijack as well that occurred just few days ago which was later diffused by the Indian Navy. So this rising security threat poses a major risk to the global economy, and it could have a huge geopolitical impact. It's altering the strategic equations in the region. So India, of course, is deeply concerned about the developments because India is heavily dependent on the trade route. A large part of India's exports and imports are passing through this route, through Bab el-Mandeb Strait and Red Sea. A large part of India's oil and gas shipments coming from West Asia and beyond are coming through this route. Russian oil, for example, which has become critical for us in the last 2 years, is coming through the same route. So any such threat, right, not only destabilizes the trading route, but it increases the cost of trade as well. Because now the ships are being forced to abandon the route, the shorter route, and they are taking a much longer circuitous route to reach Indian Ocean. Most shipping companies, most countries, they have stopped using the Suez Canal, Bab el-Mandeb route. They've stopped sending their ships via Red Sea because of the increased risk. First of all, near Bab el-Mandeb, near Horn of Africa, this is Horn of Africa region, near Gulf of Aden. Here there was already a threat of piracy from Somalia. Somalia is this East African country here in Horn of Africa region. So Somalian pirates were already posing a threat to shipping here. Now, along with that, Houthi attacks on ships has completely threatened this route. So most ships have been diverted right now. They're coming all across Africa. They're moving around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, passing through Mozambique Channel. This is the Mozambique Channel, a critical waterway again. It's present between Madagascar and East Africa. Between the island country of Madagascar, this is Madagascar, and East Africa, there is a water body, a narrow waterway, which is the Mozambique Channel. So ships are coming from here towards Indian Ocean, then reaching India and other Asian ports. So what happens because of this is that the shipping time increases. The shipping duration has gone up significantly compared to the Bab el-Mandeb route. Is that clear? What used to take 19 days, now it's taking 31 days for a ship. So essentially the travel time has almost doubled. And this increase in time increases the fuel cost, the transportation cost, the overall cost of shipping increases. And because of the heightened risk, insurance premium for the ships increases exponentially. See, all ships have to be insured. The cargo that they are carrying has to be insured. Okay, the insurance premium is a critical factor that plays a big role in transportation and logistics. Now, because of the increased risk, because of these attacks, insurance companies will jack up their premium. And as they pay more premium, the cost of transportation increases even further. Plus, the time has increased, the fuel cost has gone up, all the associated logistical costs increases, and this will get reflected in your commodity prices, in your oil and gas prices. Can you see the cascading effect? The prices of essential commodities will shoot up. It could delay manufacturing. Let's say Indian companies are waiting for key supplies from Europe and the shipments are delayed. It will derail manufacturing in India. Key exports from India will be derailed. They'll take more time, especially perishable products like fruits and vegetables, which is a key export of India, right? Even dairy and other commodities, their shelf life is very short. So they'll need more refrigeration, more cooling, or the produce might get spoiled, resulting in losses for our farmers, for our food industry. So there are many, many consequences arising out of this crisis, and hence India is paying maximum attention to stabilize this region. Is that clear? The increasing cost of commodities, oil and gas, can completely destabilize the global economy itself. So that is why there is significant global focus on stabilizing the region to counter these Houthi attacks in Red Sea and Arabian Sea. So the United States has already formed a coalition and launched an operation called Operation Prosperity Guardian. All right, the US has a major naval presence here. It has a platform called Combined Maritime Forces, or CMF. It's led by the US Navy. It is part of the US Central Command. All right. So it's headquartered in Bahrain, in the West Asian country of Bahrain, at its capital, Manama. This is where the Combined Maritime Forces are located, which is led by the US Navy. It brings many foreign navies together from West Asia, from Europe, and other American allies. They're all part of it. Even India has become a member of it recently. India is also a member of the Combined Maritime Forces. So under the Combined Maritime Forces, the US Navy launched this operation called Operation Prosperity Guardian to target Houthis and to protect the ships in this shipping lane. But however, most countries have not joined the initiative, including India. India itself has not joined. Even American allies like Saudi Arabia, France, Italy, Spain, they're all part of Combined Maritime Forces, but they've all quit the initiative. They're not part of Operation Prosperity Guardian. Even other American allies like Japan and Australia, which are far away from this region, which are not so affected, even they have refused to deploy their navy here. So there is a reason why India is not joining this US-led initiative. Because see, this is not under the UN. It's not a framework where every country plays an equal role. This is an initiative led by the US. If India were to join this initiative, it's as good as we joining a military alliance or military club. And we never join such military alliances. India will be uncomfortable to be under US leadership. Even NATO allies of US, like France, Italy, Spain, they themselves have quit Operation Prosperity Guardian. Why? Because they don't want to be under the leadership of US Navy. Because that will send out a wrong message. On one hand, US is giving full support to Israel in the war. Both US and Israel are facing a lot of criticism for the large-scale human rights violations they are responsible for in Palestine. Many countries, including India, European countries, they are against it. And we can't be seen on the side of US and Israel, that too under a military grouping. So India has consciously decided to not join Operation Prosperity Guardian. So US with few other countries is leading this operation. Parallelly, others are starting their own initiative. Italy, France, Spain, and others, they have deployed their own navies to counter the threat. And similarly, Indian Navy is also deployed in an operational role. Defense Minister Rajnath Singh said after the recent attacks that we will hit back against these attackers. We will stabilize this route. So there is constant deployment of Indian Navy. Multiple frontline warships are deployed in Gulf of Aden, near Bab el-Mandeb. And they are guarding the ships, providing escort to the commercial ships. And if there are any reports of a hijacking attempt, they are deploying all the assets to protect the commercial shipping in the region. Is that clear? Recently, a Liberian vessel which was passing through this region was reportedly brought under a hijack attempt. We are not sure whether it was by Somalian pirates or by Houthi rebels. Once the message was received, Indian Navy reached out immediately. It deployed its P-8I Poseidon reconnaissance aircraft, and later a warship was also deployed. INS Chennai was sent, and Indian Marine Commandos, the Marcos of Indian Navy, they boarded the vessel and they freed the crew. They didn't find the hijackers because as Indian Navy deployed and surrounded the hijacked vessel, they had left and abandoned the vessel. They had run away. So India secured this vessel, safely brought the crew back and escorted the vessel. So Indian Navy is constantly deployed right now, safeguarding this important shipping route. That is the way in which all countries can stabilize this route and minimize the security risks. Or else this will have a big economic geopolitical impact, and you can already see the economic impact on Indian trade as well. Is that clear? Many trade associations have said the export-import cost has gone up. The delays are affecting producers, manufacturing in India, right? So this creates a chain of events that has the ability to destabilize the global economy and have a bigger geopolitical impact. So that is why Indian Navy is proactively deployed here, and we are coordinating with others. It's not that we'll not coordinate with US. We will coordinate with them, but will not be part of Operation Prosperity Guardian. We are coordinating with Italy, France, Spain, and all the big powers present here, working with their navies as well to counter the Houthis and the pirates to stabilize this critical shipping route. So, given the importance of this development, you can expect mains questions and prelims questions. Prelims questions can be map-based questions. That's why I spent so much time on the map pointing out important locations. So be familiar with the trade route and the key locations present here. All right. In mains, you can get a question like this. Examine the strategic and economic risks emanating for India and the world as a result of increased maritime security risks in the Red Sea Gulf of Aden trade route. So once you understood this topic, and if you can take the points from what I discussed and present that in the same order, right, your answer will do justice to this question. The discussion I'm having, it's in the same structure. You can take points directly from that for your introduction, for the body, and the conclusion. So please put that effort. After the session ends, I really hope all of you will put some effort to write an answer to these questions based on what we have discussed. Right? Now, the third topic is related to India-Maldives relations. Before I get into that, again, I would like to take a look at the questions. Let's pick up a couple of questions. I'm sure you will have some doubts. Keep your questions restricted to the second topic. A student is asking, sir, why are they attacking the ships? Houthis are attacking the ships because they want to support Hamas. They want to support the Palestinians who are now under attack by Israel. So by destabilizing the region, by targeting Israeli-American interests, right, they're extending support to the Gaza war. That is the prime reason why Houthis are attacking these ships. Also, when the global economy comes under threat, right, they're not just targeting Israeli-American ships, they're targeting every other ship. So as it creates an economic situation, every country will now focus more on it, on this issue. They will bring more pressure on Israel as well to stop the war. Since the global economy could get derailed, right, most countries will put pressure on Israel to tone down the conflict in Gaza and to spare the Palestinians. So that is also a motive for Houthis, who are sponsored by Iran. Chandra Jyoti had a similar question. What's the demand of Houthi rebel group? This is their primary demand with regard to the attacks they are carrying out. But in Yemen, their demand is to throw the government and capture whole Yemen for themselves, to rule Yemen. That is their primary goal. But with regard to the attacks that they are carrying out, it's to put pressure on Israel and US. Yusra is asking, are countries supporting Israel, are they taking a longer route as well? Yes, even other ships are taking a longer route because no one can take a risk. A ship carrying millions of dollars worth of goods can't be sent into a risky route. What if it is attacked and all the goods are lost? Right? The company will simply collapse. The shipping company will collapse. So most ships are getting diverted, majority of them. And interestingly, Russian ships are being spared. Why? Russia is an Iranian ally. Don't forget that. So Russian oil shipment to India is unaffected. Russian oil supplies are freely continuing and Houthis are not targeting them because Russia is an Iranian ally. Akash is asking, sir, why India has joined Combined Maritime Forces Coalition, especially when we refrain from such military groupings. See, Combined Maritime Forces in Bahrain, it's not just a US initiative. It's a multilateral initiative. It's like a regional initiative, which is critical for West Asia. That is why India became a member of Combined Maritime Forces. That doesn't violate our principle of strategic autonomy. It doesn't violate our principle of independent foreign policy. Combined Maritime Forces is not just a military grouping. It's a platform, a naval platform created where US is acting as the primary leader, but other countries also have an equal role to play. That's why we joined Combined Maritime Forces. But Operation Prosperity Guardian is different. Operation Prosperity Guardian, launched by US, is primarily a US operation, right? So India and others, even France and Italy, they're all uncomfortable to be under US leadership in such an operation. That's why they have stayed out of it. All right. But Combined Maritime Forces is a regional security framework created by US and other countries as well. So since it's a multilateral platform, India is comfortable in joining Combined Maritime Forces. Sulakshana is asking why UN doesn't take action against Iran if they know Houthis are sponsored by them. See, that's because UN is ineffective. United Nations doesn't really have enough authority on its own to take such action. Even if, let's say, a resolution is moved at UN Security Council by US or UK or France, which are the permanent members, it will be shot down by either Russia or China. Russia, China support Iran, right? UN itself has become an ineffective organization because of this, because all permanent members, the 5 permanent members, they have used UNSC to play geopolitics. Just like Russia, China support Iran and defeat any UN resolution, similarly, US, UK, France, they support their own allies and defeat other resolutions pushed by Russia and China. These big powers have just played geopolitics with UN. So UN has become an ineffective body. It can't really be effective in any such issue. All right. So guys, these were some of the questions. Now let's take a look at the next topic. What's happening between India and Maldives? I'm sure all of you are already aware. It's a trending topic. I don't think I even have to explain it, right? But anyways, let's take a look at this. It's a very big development. In fact, last month as well, when we had a IR webinar, I think on 5th of December, we had discussed the India-Maldives issue. So it's a continuation of the discussion because there are some new developments. We had studied in the last class that following the recent elections in Maldives, a new government has come up. There is a new president, Dr. Mohammad Muizzu. And Mohammad Muizzu has apparently emerged as an anti-India leader. Now, this is nothing new. We have seen this before as well. Is that clear? In 2012, the same party, the PPM, which was headed by Abdullah Yamin Gayoom, had come to power in 2012. And for almost 5 to 6 years, it had continued an anti-India policy. Because Yamin Gayoom, the former president of Maldives, was seen as a pro-China leader. This was the result of the larger geopolitical game being played between India and China in Maldives. Until 2011, India was the predominant influence in Maldives. We had a fantastic relationship with Maldives from 1960s, 70s itself. We have given complete support to Maldives, military support. We have protected the country against a military coup in 1980s. Indian troops were deployed. We have supplied financial aid, essential commodities. We have funded infrastructure projects, including the tourism industry, the resorts, the hospitality industry in Maldives has been funded partly by India. So India-Maldives enjoyed a fantastic relationship until 2011. But as China became more interested in the Indian Ocean, and as China wanted to counter Indian influence, it started creating divisions in Maldives. China established its embassy in 2011 and started backing certain anti-India forces in Maldives. It supported leaders like Abdullah Yamin Gayoom and his party, the PPM, and a pro-India government which was there under Mohammad Nasheed, who was the leader of MDP, Maldivian Democratic Party. This leader was thrown out in 2011-2012. He was a pro-India leader. The MDP has been a great friend of India. Is that clear? A good friend of India. He was removed from power in an unconstitutional, undemocratic manner, and Abdullah Yamin Gayoom captured power, held a manipulated election, and became the president of Maldives. So under his entire term, he adopted anti-India policies and pro-China policies. It was under Yamin Gayoom that Maldives joined the Belt and Road Initiative of China, took a lot of investments, loans from China, leased islands. Critical islands were leased to China as well, where China is building strategic projects. China is building runways, port facilities, which can be used with the Chinese Navy and the Chinese Air Force. So these projects became a strategic threat for India. It brought a lot of investments into Maldives, signed a free trade agreement as well. So this was a disastrous period for India as our ties got badly affected. Even radical forces were supported. Radical forces were supported, and there was Pakistani involvement as well. as China became influential under Yamin Gayoom, Pakistan also started backing radical forces here, which created the threat of terrorism in the region, which could particularly affect India. So India was deeply worried when these developments occurred in Maldives from 2012 to 2018. But finally, we had gotten a break. In 2018, a pro-India leader won the election. The Maldivian Democratic Party won the 2018 election, and Ibrahim Soleh had become the president. Ibrahim Soleh was a good friend of India. He was a close associate of former President Mohammad Nasheed. So he continued the India first policy of Maldives, meaning Maldives would give first priority to India, given that India and Maldives are such close partners. It was in line with our neighborhood first policy launched by Prime Minister Modi. So again, for 5 years, India made a comeback. We gave a lot of investments. We took up some key strategic projects in Maldives, increased our military support. We have gifted aircrafts, helicopters, and even naval vessels to Maldives. We have played a critical role in enhancing the defense capabilities of Maldives since 20, 30 years. So the defense strategic ties were back. Indian personnel were helping Maldives in guarding its coastline, its exclusive economic zone. So close relations came back between India and Maldives until 2023. But last year, after the elections took place, Mohammad Muizzu became the president. And who is Mohammad Muizzu? He's a close associate of Yamin Gayoom. He comes from the same party, the PPM, which has been pro-China and anti-India in the past. So this guy, Yamin Gayoom, after losing the elections in 2018, he had started a India Out campaign. By 2020 itself, Yamin Gayoom, who had lost the election, he had started a campaign called India Out. If Ibrahim Soleh was following India First policy as the president, the opposition leaders like Yamin Gayoom, they had started a campaign called India Out, meaning they wanted to throw out Indian influence from Maldives. They gave a call to end Indian influence. They gave a call to remove Indian military assets stationed in Maldives. The helicopters, aircrafts, and naval vessels we had gifted, which were being maintained by Indian military personnel, right? They were asked to leave, and a targeted campaign was carried out. Indian diplomats would be harassed. Resorts, hotels owned by Indians would be targeted. So this became a concern for India. And now a leader from the same party has formed a new coalition government, and he's someone who's very close to Yamin Gayoom. So Mohammad Muizzu, during the recent election campaign, had said, if he is voted to power, he will ensure that India Out is implemented. Meaning he will ask India to take out the military equipment and remove the military personnel who are stationed in Maldives. So India was already worried. And the moment he won the elections, he became the president, he started insisting on the India Out campaign. He said, Maldives is a democratic country, it can't accept foreign troops, and he ordered India to take back the foreign troops, including the military equipment we have given. So this had already created a divide between India and Maldives. Is that clear? His campaign against Indian military presence had again raised the concern about his government being pro-China and openly anti-India. To address these concerns, Prime Minister Modi even met Mohammad Muizzu during the Climate Change Summit in Dubai in December 23, right? Climate Change Summit, COP28 was held in Dubai, and PM Modi met with Mohammad Muizzu to address the concerns. But even there, Mohammad Muizzu repeated that India Out campaign will be implemented. He asked Prime Minister Modi to remove the troops, remove the military equipment, and along with that, Maldives has not renewed a hydrographic survey agreement. Hydrographic survey is an underwater survey conducted by the Navy. Indian Navy has the capability. By using sonar technology, we scan the underwater terrain, create a map, a topographic map of the seabed. This helps in deploying ships and submarines in navigation. It also helps in mapping resources present on the seafloor. So India provides hydrographic surveys as a gift to many countries to gain influence. We have done hydrographic surveys for Myanmar, for Sri Lanka, for Kenya, Mauritius, Mozambique, Oman, Seychelles, Tanzania. All these countries have benefited from India's hydrographic surveys. We share the data with them as well. It will help them to map resources to deploy their ships. It helps Indian Navy as well to deploy its ships and submarines. With Maldives, we had a similar agreement. We had conducted hydrographic surveys and the data was exchanged between India and Maldives when things were good between the two governments. But now Mohammad Muizzu has refused to renew this. Mohammad Muizzu has said, we will not renew this agreement because we want India to be out of Maldives. Then I'll tell you something else which happened. The new vice president of Maldives, he did not attend the Colombo Security Conclave, which is led by India. Colombo Security Conclave is a new security grouping of Indian Ocean formed in 2022. It includes India. India is the leader of Colombo Security Conclave with Sri Lanka, Mauritius, and Maldives. These 4 Indian Ocean countries led by India, they are members of Colombo Security Conclave. Through this, they discuss all security issues of Indian Ocean, from terrorism to organized crime to disaster management, etc. So the vice president of Maldives skipped the Colombo Security Conclave and instead he attended the Indian Ocean Forum, which is organized by China. Is that clear? This was another shock for India. And then Maldives also said that the free trade agreement will be revived with China. It spoke about a new FTA with China to improve trade with China. Then Mohammad Muizzu visited many countries. Usually Maldivian presidents, after winning elections, they come to India for the first visit to show that India is the most important partner. But Mohammad Muizzu has skipped India. He went to Turkey, he went to UAE, and now he's going to China. So as you know, we already have issues with Turkey. Turkey has been pro-Pakistan, openly supporting Pakistan over the Kashmir issue, interfering with India's internal matters. China has been stepping up its influence in the Indian Ocean, right? So his visit to Turkey and China instead of India is something that concerns India. He has refused to renew the hydrographic survey agreement. He has boycotted the Colombo Security Conclave, and he has stepped up the India Out campaign, asking India to remove the military equipment and the troops. So this had created a major divide in the relationship. And now in the last 2-3 days, something else has happened. As a result of all these developments, obviously India is worried. Prime Minister Modi, in a very calculated move, which is seen as both a diplomatic, strategic, and as well as a political move, he paid a visit to Lakshadweep. As you know, Lakshadweep is right next to Maldives. In fact, our exclusive economic zone, right? It is present over here, where Lakshadweep and Maldives get divided here. That's where you have a boundary, the maritime boundary line between India and Maldives to be present. So whatever island and recreational beauty that you find in Maldives is found in Lakshadweep as well. The beautiful waters, the blue waters, white sand beaches, right? It's a perfect beach destination, just like Maldives. Maldives is a well-known global tourist destination, whereas Lakshadweep has largely stayed out of this radar because we have not created the right infrastructure. And PM Modi paid a visit to Lakshadweep. Of course, there is an electoral calculation here as well in the run-up to the coming elections. Right? There would be an attempt to please the voters, to swing elections as well. But apart from political motives, there was a clear economic strategic intent. The intent was to promote the tourism potential of Lakshadweep. So PM Modi tweeted his images, having a small vacation in Lakshadweep. He went snorkeling as well. He tweeted about the natural beauty of Lakshadweep, and he urged Indians to focus on local tourism. As you know, in the last few years, Maldives is a hot destination for Indians, right? Especially during pandemic and after the pandemic, Indians have rushed to Maldives in large numbers, and India has become the biggest source of tourists for Maldives. The biggest source of tourists into Maldives is India. Is that clear? So, Prime Minister Modi said that Indians should focus on Lakshadweep instead of going to Maldives. Even though he didn't say this explicitly, right? He just tweeted about Lakshadweep, right, without mentioning Maldives at all. But this was seen as a subtle promotion of Lakshadweep against Maldives in the tourism sector. So this was a genuine attempt by India. But this triggered a backlash on social media. In Maldives, the anti-India elements, the anti-India section which is there, they picked this up as an offense to their tourist industry. Some of the ministers in the new Maldivian government, who all belong to the anti-India faction, they started tweeting and they used very bad language against the Indian Prime Minister and against India. They made racist comments, xenophobic comments, targeting India and Indian tourists. They interpreted this as India's strategy to hit the tourism industry of Maldives by promoting Lakshadweep, even though Prime Minister never said anything about that. Prime Minister never compared Lakshadweep with Maldives. He just said Lakshadweep is a great tourist location. There might be a subtle strategy, but it was never explicitly mentioned. But Maldivian ministers who were part of the government targeted the Indian head of government with very abusive words and even carried out racist attack against Indians. So these tweets went viral and it exploded on Indian social media. So Indian social media responded and retaliated, as it always does. So this triggered a massive uproar in India. Since the last 3 days, boycott Maldives has been a trending hashtag. You would have noticed everywhere on Twitter, YouTube, on every social media platform, boycott Maldives is a trending hashtag. So this brought tremendous pressure on Maldives and it highlights the divides that exist in the India-Maldives relationship. Now the issue of tourism, people-to-people relations is getting affected because of the geopolitical factors. So as Indian social media retaliated, right, it became a big issue and India also criticized the statements made by Maldivian ministers because this was undiplomatic. So following this, the Maldivian government has issued a statement. The Maldivian government has distanced itself from these controversial comments of the ministers, and those 3 ministers who made the comments, they have been suspended. They've been sacked by the new government. Is that clear? But in India, a massive movement has begun, an online movement has begun to boycott Maldives. Now see, this is where you have to be cautious. Indians, as you know, we tend to be emotional, we react on nationalist lines. It's all good, it's great. Yes, you can't stand any such humiliation being given to our leader or to the country or to Indians in general. But if this mixes with geopolitics, this could derail our diplomacy towards Maldives. Because don't forget, all Maldivians are not anti-India. Maldivians are great friends of India. Today, there is so much hatred which has developed in last few days between Indians and Maldivians that it could rupture the relationship. And who will benefit from this? China, Pakistan. So many experts are looking deeper into what has happened in the last 2-3 days. It's not as simple as 3 ministers tweeting about India and Indians retaliating against it, calling for boycott of Maldives. There is something deeper going on. There is a bigger geopolitical game at play. It's a India-China game, India versus China game. Today, social media plays a big role in influencing government decisions. So Indian government right now will be constrained from reaching out to Maldives. We can't engage in a good dialogue because there is public pressure, right? So some are saying it's an Indian strategy to hit at Maldives, to hit its tourism industry because we are the biggest source of tourists, to force Maldives to be in India's influence, not in Chinese influence. Some are saying it could be a Chinese ploy, deliberately instigating the anti-India sentiments to divide India and Maldives, to keep India and Maldives away, so that China will automatically benefit. We may never know the truth. The actual truth may not be known in the public domain, but definitely you need to look at the larger geopolitical game which is going on. This didn't happen on its own, right? There is a targeted campaign from either of the sides. It could be from anywhere, from Maldives, from India, from China. But one thing is clear, that what happens on social media does have a realistic impact. It does impact the real world. So India will have to now come out with a very diplomatic response. We can't simply cater to the Indian public. Right now, Bollywood actors, cricketers, many startups, they've all supported the call. From Akshay Kumar to Sachin Tendulkar to Amitabh Bachchan, everyone has tweeted against Maldives, right? Many big companies and startups, even various tourist agencies, apps like Ease My Trip and others, they've stopped taking bookings. They're no more allowing Indian tourists, and there is the sentiment that Indian tourists should no longer go to Maldives. But this will not only have an economic impact on our airlines, on the whole tourist industry for both sides, but this could derail our diplomatic ties. See, yes, Maldivian government might have acted against Indian interests, might have favored China, but this is not the way to handle it. The negative reaction of the public might bring a lot of pressure on the Indian government to not cultivate better ties with Maldives. This will only benefit China and undermines our influence in the long run. So, as UPSC aspirants, I hope you can see the bigger picture. As I told you, we can't pinpoint the truth, whether who's responsible for it. Is it India? Is it Maldives or China? We don't know. But whatever happens on social media should be isolated as much as possible, right? Because this, if it has a real world impact, it could end up derailing our ties with Maldives, which is a critical country in the Indian Ocean, right? The only one who will benefit from this would be China. Doesn't matter who started it, doesn't matter who's to be blamed, but the only one who will be benefited by this crisis is China. Boycott Maldives might be a cool trend to follow, but if Maldives tourist industry is hit, its economy will collapse. Maldivian economy is heavily dependent on tourism. Eventually, India will be forced to help, or if India can't help, then China will step in, and China will firmly establish its presence and influence. So India is mindful of this, but the public pressure does play a big role. Social media influence plays a big role in determining foreign policy as well. Is that clear? So this is what has happened. Now let's see what happens in the coming days. It's a trending and a developing story. We need to keep track of this development, and we need to see how this issue progresses, how India handles this issue. India has already summoned the Maldivian High Commissioner, and it has expressed its unhappiness about how the Maldivian ministers had reacted. Following this, Maldivian government, the president, they have already suspended the 3 ministers. So it has taken action, which is a good sign. It's a positive sign. The government has issued a statement that this is not the view of the Maldivian government. There are few elements who have done it, and those ministers who made these remarks, they have been suspended. So now, diplomacy has to work. Negotiations have to work to repair the damage which has happened in the relationship. If the government allows public sentiments to drive the relationship, if it allows social media to drive the relationship, then India will be the losing party. We will lose our influence. China will step up its influence. Is that clear? So I'm sure many of you would have been taken, even you would have consumed this social media trend, thinking it's a nationalistic thing to do, it's a patriotic thing to do. But trust me, this will affect India more than others, right? Because in the long run, it's our relationship which will suffer. From decades, it has been a closely cultivated relationship, a carefully built relationship. Now, to see this collapse, it's very painful for any foreign policy expert, right? Many former diplomats have also said the same, that we should not allow these incidents by some elements to derail the bigger relationship. Is that clear? So that is what we take away from this development. You can expect a direct question on such topics. Even though it's a sensitive, complex topic, there can be a question. Take this for practice. Examine the recent developments in India's ties with Maldives. A detailed answer would be required. You have to trace the history, the previous years, what happened between India and Maldives, right? How we have faced challenges, and now what are the current challenges with the new president in place and with anti-India sentiments again on the rise in Maldives. So please take this up for your answer writing practice. Now, before we look at the fourth topic, again, let's take a look at your doubts. Karthik is asking, sir, what's the possible diplomacy in this case? See, India, the government of India should distance itself from boycott Maldives campaign. Government should not associate itself with boycott Maldives. Boycott Maldives is a social media campaign led by Indian social media users and by some companies, celebrities, actors, etc. Government of India should not get involved with it. And we have to carefully manage the relationship talk to Maldives, maintain the tourist relationship that we have. See, it's good to promote Lakshadweep. It's a great idea. At the same time, it shouldn't be undermine the tourist industry of Maldives. The government shouldn't be seen to be targeting Maldives. That would be a wrong approach, right? And to give credit to Prime Minister Modi and the government, they haven't done it. Prime Minister Modi never said about targeting Maldives. He just went to Lakshadweep, promoted Lakshadweep, which is a correct thing to do. The wrong interpretation is from some of the radical elements in Maldives, the anti-India elements. Now, carefully, we have to allow this pressure to die down, distance ourselves from the social media campaign. Social media will always do what it wants. You can't allow the larger public and social media to influence government policy and government decisions. Is that clear? Yes, the pressure will always be there, but that alone can't determine our policy towards Maldives. So we have to carefully nurture the relationship, rebuild the economic people-to-people ties, and try and undercut China's influence in other ways. There are many other ways through which we can do that. We can provide economic benefits. We can match Chinese investments, right? We can build a better dialogue with the new leader to convince him to retain the Indian military presence, which is for the good of Maldives. The Indian military equipment, military personnel present in Maldives, they not just benefit India, they benefit Maldives itself. Right? At a time when Houthi attacks and piracy is increasing, Maldives will all need that support all the more. Right? So India can convince Maldives on those lines to continue our military presence, to step up our economic investments and maintain the close people-to-people relations and cultural ties, promote the tourism business that we have between each other. Right? It should not become a match, a contest between India and Maldives. It's not a contest between Lakshadweep and Maldives. It's very important to move away from this narrative. It's a dangerous narrative which has gotten built on social media. So government has to move away from it and allow careful diplomacy to work. Anmol Deep is asking, sir, are Chinese troops stationed in Maldives? No. Officially, there are no Chinese troops in Maldives. It's only Indian troops in Maldives. Shiv is asking, sir, as you told, this is an insult to our leader. So how do we teach them a lesson? See, Shiv, this is a wrong approach to take. You don't have to teach a lesson to anyone. Governance, diplomacy is not about revenge. Revenge is for people who are emotional. Governance is about keeping emotions away and acting in a rational manner, taking rational, logical decisions. Right? Just because someone said something, you can't go hunt everyone and take revenge against everyone. That's a wrong image to cultivate. If tomorrow, if India starts doing that on a regular basis, we will be hated across the world. Right? If Indians react to every statement coming from abroad, then we will lose our image. The soft image we have cultivated will be lost. Indians will be seen as a bunch of thugs, online thugs. So we need to stay away from such trends and allow the governments to continue the diplomatic relationship. Right? Revenge is not the option. If someone says something, how does it affect us? Yes, the government will act on it. If it's coming from government leaders, we will take it up diplomatically. We would have either ways ensured the ministers would be suspended. It's not for social media to directly determine and influence foreign policy. Muskan is asking, can we mention this social media controversy in the mains answer? Yes, definitely yes. UPSC might ask you, that social media trends are influencing our foreign policy interests. What do you think? What's your opinion? Should we act according to social media opinion or should we stay away from it? So such questions can come. Vikram is asking, sir, why Maldivian government doesn't realize that the larger threat in the long run is from China, as seen in the case of Sri Lanka? See, that's because some of the Maldivian political parties and leaders, they have been funded from China, like the PPM, Yamin Abdullah Gayoom, Mohammad Muizu. They're all very close to China. They've received a lot of funds from them. So it's all politics at the end of the day. It's with Chinese support, Chinese funds that they've won the election. And what is the core issue on which they win elections? It's by projecting India as the enemy. That's how this party has won elections in the past. The PPM, Even under Yamin Gayoom used to do the same by promoting anti-India sentiments. So doesn't mean all Maldivians are anti-India. That's not the case. Now, do all Indians hate Maldivians? No. Many Indians are in good ties with Maldives. We have good interest with Maldives. We have a historical, cultural relationship. Just because a section of Indians are outraged doesn't mean everyone hates Maldivians. No, that's not the case. Similarly, in Maldives as well, there are many pro-India elements, like the MDP, leaders like Mohammad Nasheed, Ibrahim Soleh. Majority of Maldivians understand India's importance because many of their students, they come to India for education. Their patients come to India for healthcare treatment. Their tourism industry is dependent on Indian tourists. So there are many Maldivians who appreciate what India does. They know that this relationship is critical. Just because some elements are doing something, saying something, doesn't mean we destroy the relationship, right? It should never lead to that. All right. Now let's look at the next topic. The next few topics are a little smaller topics. All right. We can go through the developments, understand its importance without going too much in depth. We'll just take a quick look at all the next few topics, starting with Qatar. There is a development with regard to India-Qatar relations. Last year, 2022, last year, 8 Indian nationals were arrested in Qatar. Who are these Indian nationals? They were former Indian Navy officers, former Indian naval soldiers who were working for a defense company called Al Dhara Global, or just known as Dhara Global. It was a defense company. All right, it was based out of Oman. It's headquartered in Oman. It doesn't exist anymore. It's been shut down. It was owned by an Israeli. And a lot of Indian retired officers, retired soldiers were working for this company. A number of them from Indian Army, Indian Navy, Indian Air Force, especially from Indian Navy. Many of them were recruited working for this Omani company called Al Dhara Global, owned by an Israeli, and it was working with the Qatari Navy. All right. The background is essential to understand. It's not relevant for the exam, but you should know the background or else you can't understand the background of the case. So this Oman-based defense company, which largely employed Indian former military officers, right? They were working on a contract with Qatari Navy. All right. Qatar's Navy was procuring an advanced submarine, a midget submarine from Italy. It's a mini submarine built by Italy, which has a lot of stealth features. It's almost undetectable, right? So such an advanced stealth midget submarine was being procured by Qatar from Italy. And to train the naval officers, it had given the contract for Al Dhara Global. So essentially, Indian retired naval officers who were working for this company, they were training Qatari Navy. It was a private contract. But then something happened in 2022. All of a sudden, Qatar's intelligence agencies, they arrested 8 Indian naval officers, retired naval officers who were working for this company, and they were charged. The charges were never revealed in the public. Even today, we don't officially know what the charges are. It's a classified case. The case has been kept confidential. Only government authorities, the concerned stakeholders, are aware of the charges. Publicly, it has never been revealed as to what the charges are. But the speculation is that they have been charged with espionage, meaning they were allegedly spying against Qatar. Now, the question is, why would they do that? Maybe it was an Indian intelligence operation led by RAW, because Pakistani Navy also wants to procure the same submarine from Italy. That is a speculation. All right. Officially, we don't know the charges. But one speculation is that maybe it was an Indian intelligence operation. India's foreign intelligence agency, RAW, had recruited former Indian naval officers, placed them in this defense company, which is owned by an Israeli. Israel, as you know, is very close to India. We have close intelligence and defense relations with Israel. So maybe there was a covert program to spy on the submarine, which Pakistan was also looking to procure. Maybe that is a speculation. Or it could be a Israeli mission. Maybe it was a Mossad operation, not an Indian operation. Mossad is Israel's intelligence agency. Maybe Israel's Mossad was running the operation by using this defense company to spy on Qatar, because Qatar has become a threat to Israel. Why? Qatar is in close touch with Hamas. It has become one of the sponsors, supporters of Hamas. Hamas leadership is in Qatar. So Qatar's increasing defense capabilities would have been a threat for Israel. Maybe Israelis were running an operation to spy on Qatar and Indians caught in between. We don't know. We will never know. But the truth is somewhere again in between. We don't know what exactly happened. But the charges were brought against them and they were convicted. The case went on for almost a year. They have been kept in custody. They were kept in solitary confinement as well. Later, they were given consular access according to the established conventions, the Vienna Convention on Consular Access. According to it, Indian consular officials, essentially Indian diplomats stationed at Doha, they were given access. The Indian embassy in Qatar reached out to the arrested naval officers. We inquired their well-being, gave legal support as well, and since then we have been fighting this case. On one hand, there is the families of these arrested retired officers, which is fighting a case. Plus, the Indian government is directly involved to ensure the well-being of these officers. Now, the case went on for a year. Consular access was given. They could talk to their families once in a while. Indian officials visited them in jail, gave legal support as well. Finally, a court ruling came out and they were given the death penalty. They were awarded the death punishment. This shocked India. Imagine 8 Indian former soldiers being delivered a death penalty in a foreign country. Now, this was of greater concern for India because in West Asia, death penalty is a reality. They'll execute it as well. So India had to act very quickly because see, India is concerned about the well-being of the Indian community abroad, be it non-resident Indians, people of Indian origin, right? The Indian citizens abroad who are studying, working abroad. We are concerned about their well-being. It's a duty of the Indian government to protect them, to help them, especially when they face a crisis like this. Now, doesn't mean we can interfere in this. See, this is their legal process. We can't simply put pressure on them to abandon the case or to release them just because they're Indians. We can't do that. That will destroy the relationship. Now, will India tolerate if someone else interferes in a legal process in India? Let's say a foreign citizen has been held on murder charges in India, case is going on. If foreign government puts pressure on India that release this guy, will India listen to it? No. No country will listen to abandoning the case itself. So that was never India's objective. We would never push Qatar to abandon the case. It's their right. It's a sovereign government. They have every right to go ahead with the case. If they have evidence, they have the right to punish them as well. We can't interfere. But however, we do have a concern. We can ensure that they get the right treatment. We can ensure they can get the fair trial and a fair punishment. So as soon as the death penalty was awarded, India stepped up its diplomacy. Because we do have legal diplomatic options which we can explore. Without interfering with their internal process, without exerting unnecessary pressure which can weaken, destroy the relationship, we can exercise the legal diplomatic options to convince Qatar for a fair treatment and maybe to show sympathy, to show some sympathy and give a pardon. So India employed all the methods. Through the family members, we filed an appeal. The family members have appointed their own lawyers. They have approached the higher courts in Qatar and appealed against the death penalty. And India is giving legal support, diplomatic support to the ongoing case. And we ourselves took it up at the highest levels. Prime Minister Modi traveled to Dubai to attend COP28 summit. There he met with the Emir of Qatar, the ruler of Qatar, the king. So definitely the issue was discussed here because PM Modi said that one issue he discussed with the Emir was the well-being of Indian community in Qatar. What does it mean? It meant specifically the issue of Indian former naval officers being given death penalty was discussed. So this might have played a role in what happened next. Indian diplomats as well took up the issue through diplomatic channels. We would have brought in some political influence as well from other close friends like US, Saudi Arabia, UAE, which are all very close to Qatar and India. We would have used their help, maybe US, maybe Saudi Arabia, UAE, convinced Qatar's leadership to go easy on the case. We're not asking them to abandon the process, but to go easy and give a fair punishment and a fair trial. So these legal diplomatic options we have explored gave a result finally, because in one of the court of appeal, the death penalty has been commuted. Last week, Qatar's court of appeal commuted the death sentence, meaning they will not be given death penalty. Instead, they will be imprisoned. Doesn't mean they'll be let off. They have not been pardoned. Pardoning power is only with the emir. All right. And the question of pardon comes only after all the legal processes are exhausted. Just like we have a process in India. Let's say a lower court has given death penalty. Case will go to High Court. It will go to Supreme Court. After all appeals are exhausted, only then you can approach President of India asking for a pardon. Similarly, in Qatar also, there is a process. So we are exploring all the options. Now, commuting the death sentence was a priority. We got it done. At least their lives are safe right now. They'll not be executed. This gives us time. Right now, they have been imprisoned. They've been given a jail term from 3 to 25 years jail. Some officers have been given only 3 years jail, and for some it goes up to 25 years. Since 8 were arrested, right? 8 were convicted. The jail term varies for everyone. It's from 3 to 25 years. Even this is very high, right? Now we want to ensure they are treated in a better way. We want to ensure that they are reunited with their family, right? If they are in 25 years in jail, they're already 40, 50 plus years. They might even die in Qatar without ever meeting their family. So India is working on this on a humanitarian ground. So we are exploring all the options from the next court of appeal to an eventual pardon request, right? We will exercise our diplomatic options. Our diplomats will continue picking up this issue. The Prime Minister, Foreign Minister will engage with Qatar's top leaders. We will try to push for a pardon if possible, or if that is not possible, at least a reduced sentence. Maybe a sentence for 1 or 2 years, right? And if we are lucky, maybe a pardon, or there is a treaty that we have that provides for exchange of prisoners, meaning they can serve the sentence in India. But this treaty is not operational. In 2015, we had signed a treaty with Qatar that if Qatari citizens are convicted in India, instead of them being in an Indian jail, we'll send them to Qatar, they'll serve the punishment in Qatar's jail. And vice versa. If Indians are convicted in Qatar, right, punishment will be given, but they'll be sent to an Indian jail where they will serve the term in India, so that at least they can meet their families, right? So this is also another option. If nothing works, if reduced sentence, pardon doesn't work, we are trying to see whether we can operationalize this agreement. It's not operational yet. We can try and work this route to convince Qatar to hand them over to India. We'll not release them. We'll keep them in jail as punished by the Qatari court. But at least they will be in India. They can meet their families. So all these options are being explored. All right. Now, if the death penalty had continued, let's say death penalty had not been commuted, then we were exploring international option as well, the ICJ, International Court of Justice. We would have taken the case to ICJ if required, but that would have been more risky because Qatar would be offended by it. If you are filing a case against Qatar at ICJ, that would have affected our relationship negatively. So we did not use the ICJ option till the last minute. We didn't want to do that because Qatar is a great friend of India. We have very good ties with Qatar. So that's why the Prime Minister met with the Emir during the climate change summit. Our diplomats engaged with Qatari officials. Cases were taken to the next level and we have managed to get a commutation. So right now, ICJ route is most likely not required. Because when you file a litigation, you are blaming the other country. That will affect our diplomatic ties. So that was one option, but we never used it. We never had to use that. So now there are other options available, either to reduce their sentence, mainly on sympathetic grounds, or achieve a full pardon. That can be done only by the emir. Only the Qatar's emir can give a full pardon after exhausting all other legal options. And the other option is to bring them to India, make them serve the jail sentence in India. Right? So this is what we are exploring, and it highlights the concerns of Indian community abroad. This issue, the details of it is not very important. Right? All the specific details are not needed for the exam. But what happens when Indians are convicted abroad? What happens when Indians are given death penalty abroad? What does India do? What legal diplomatic options do we use? Right? That is an important topic for UPSC. There can be a question: what kind of legal diplomatic options does India pursue to aid Indians who are convicted in a foreign jurisdiction? You can draw a parallel with another case in Pakistan, where an Indian by the name Kulbhushan Jadhav has been arrested, punished by Pakistan as well, again on espionage charges. Pakistan has accused Kulbhushan Jadhav of being a raw agent. It had delivered the death penalty. We approached ICJ in this case, International Court of Justice, and got a stay order on the execution of the death sentence. But now he remains in a Pakistani jail. The case has hit a dead end, right? Since Pakistan is not in good terms with India, the case is not really progressing. But he has to serve out his prison sentence delivered by Pakistan. So in this case as well, we had explored other options, the legal diplomatic options. Since diplomacy didn't work, as Pakistan has been in a bad relationship with India, right? We explored the ICJ route, at least ensured we put off the death sentence, but we have not been able to get a fair trial and justice for Kulbhushan Jadhav, right? So that is another issue that you can draw a parallel with. Next, another important topic. Argentina rejected BRICS membership. Recently, Argentina also went through elections and a new president was elected. You can see him here in this image. His name is Mr. Milei, Alexander Milei. Alexander Javier or Javier Milei. He's the new Argentinian president. So as soon as he won the elections, one of the first major decisions he took was to not join the BRICS grouping. BRICS, as you know, is a grouping of emerging economies. It includes Brazil, India, Russia, China, and South Africa. This grouping was formed in 2009 officially. South Africa also joined the group and became BRICS, right? The BRICS is seen as a rival, as a counter to the Western-led financial institutions like World Bank and IMF. The BRICS grouping is seen as a challenge to the Western-dominated financial institutions. It was born in the context of the 2008-2009 global recession, which largely occurred because of crisis in Western markets. So Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa, which had similar concerns about the global economy, which had concerns about World Bank and IMF and how they are run by Western countries, right? They formed a counter group called BRICS, and it has become a very prominent grouping at the global level. BRICS is seen as Russia and China's counter to the West. And interestingly, India is part of BRICS. At the same time, we are working closely with Western countries as well, right? That's how India balances the Western countries with Russia and China. Now, this grouping was set for a major expansion. Its profile has increased over the last few years. And during 2023 summit, during last year's summit, new members were added to the group. And which were these countries? Argentina, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi, Egypt, UAE. So important West Asian powers like UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Iran. Important African powers like Egypt and Ethiopia. And one South American power, Argentina. They were admitted as new members and they were supposed to formally join the group on 1st January 2024, basically last week. At the start of New Year, these 6 new members were supposed to join. This was a very, very big development. It would have increased the profile of BRICS. But at the last minute, Argentinian president, the new president, refused the membership. He wrote a letter to the leaders of Russia, China, and others and rejected the BRICS membership. Why? Because this new president, he comes from a far right-wing ideology. He believes that Argentina should be aligned with US and Israel, not with communist powers, not with communist countries like Russia and China. See, please understand, Argentina is going through an economic crisis. There is massive inflation, huge unemployment. Its economy is under major crisis. It has very bad ties with Brazil as well. The previous government was a left-wing government. The previous government headed by Alberto Fernandez, who visited India as well during G20. He comes from a left-wing party and he has been pro-BRICS, pro-Russia, pro-China, pro-India. But this new leader who has come up, he's seen as a very erratic, conservative, and a populist leader. He's been compared with the likes of Donald Trump of US, Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, who are all far right-wing leaders. His ideology is aligned more with the capitalist countries like US, European countries, even Israel and others. And he has rejected any inclination towards communism, towards left-wing ideology. So by saying that Argentina will not ally with communists like Russia and China, he rejected the BRICS membership and he has said that his government will revive and review the foreign policy of Argentina. They will reset Argentina's foreign policy. They will downgrade the ties. He even said we'll cut off ties with Brazil if required. They haven't done it, but they've said, the new president has said, I'll cut off ties with Brazil. We'll move away from Russia, China, and it means India as well, and align closely with US, Israel, and others. So even though this is a development related to Latin America and the politics of that region, it does have an impact on Indian interests because India is invested heavily in the BRICS grouping. We see this as an effective counter to Western domination at World Bank and IMF. Expansion of BRICS was critical to increase the profile of the group. So now only the others have joined. The other 5 countries who are given membership, they have joined, except for Argentina. So that is why it's a development which is of concern to India. Now, let's take a prelims question based on this. Which of the following country has not been recently admitted to the BRICS grouping? Is it Iran, Saudi, Indonesia, or Egypt? I'll launch a poll. Let's see how many of you paid attention, how many of you can get the answer right. I'll give you 15 seconds. It's a straightforward question. So please go ahead and give me the answer. I want everyone to attempt. Don't sit idle. The poll is live. You have 8 to 9 seconds left. Everyone, please attempt the question. Give me the right answer. Okay. Very good. 68% have given the right answer. Correct answer is option C, Indonesia. Indonesia has not been given any membership of BRICS. Which were the countries given membership? It was Argentina, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, UAE, and Ethiopia. These were the 6 countries admitted. They were supposed to join last week, but Argentina has rejected it. Argentina is out, but other 5 members have joined. Indonesia was never in the question. It was never in the picture. So C is the correct answer. Next, topic number 6. New Delhi Declaration on AI adopted. Last month, India hosted a very, very important conference on artificial intelligence. I am sure you would have read about this in newspapers. We hosted the Global Partnership on AI. Today, AI is a trending technology. It's a critical emerging technology which will drive the future. Not just the future economy, but future geopolitics as well. So with regard to AI, there are many benefits, many advantages. At the same time, there are risks and concerns as well. For example, there is a fear that AI will replace jobs. It will increase unemployment, which is a genuine concern. There is a fear that it will lead to invasive technologies that can breach your data privacy. It can enable cybercrime. And there are catastrophic scenarios as well, where machines become much more smarter, dangerous, where they control most of the processes, posing a threat to human civilization itself, right? So from basic risks and concerns to the extreme fantasy, fictional concerns as well. So there are a lot of concerns, risks associated with AI, and trust me, all of them are genuine. even the so-called rise of machines theory is indeed a genuine concern, and many experts have flagged it, including top entrepreneurs like Elon Musk and many other top companies which are deeply involved in AI. They themselves have flagged the risk, especially after generative AI became a boom. Right now, with ChatGPT, Google's Bard, and many other generative AI platforms, there are deep concerns. For example, deep fake technology, where you can create fake images, videos that can be easily misused for cyber crimes, for creating social unrest, for disrupting democracies, manipulating elections. So there are major concerns associated with AI. At the same time, there are tremendous advantages. It can bring efficiency into the economy. It can increase productivity, right? It can create new jobs, open new sectors. So the benefits are also enormous. So to balance this out, there is a need for global regulation. All right. So India hosted a conference of the GPAI, the Global Partnership on AI. It was held in New Delhi, and the New Delhi Declaration was adopted. Now, before discussing about New Delhi Declaration, please note down the key facts about Global Partnership on AI. There can be a prelims question. This partnership was formed in 2018. It was initiative of Canada and France. They proposed this idea that we should have a global partnership on AI. So they came up with the idea in 2018, and it was officially launched in 2020. 15 members joined the partnership. Today, it has 29 members, including India. Many top powers are part of it, from US to UK, many others, Japan. India also has joined this partnership. So 29 member countries are part of it, and it functions under OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, which is a European economic grouping. It's a West European economic grouping. So under this organization, GPAI was set up, and interestingly, China is not part of it. China, which is a leader in tech, a leader in AI, has deliberately chosen to not join the Global Partnership on AI. So in New Delhi, the conference was held just in December 23, and a final declaration was adopted, the New Delhi Declaration. This declaration has tried to find a balance between promoting AI and controlling the risks associated with AI. See, on one side, we need very strict regulation of AI industry. Governments have to come out with laws and policies to restrict and even prohibit, if required, the development of dangerous technologies. If an AI platform can cause harm, there is no way we can allow the development of such technologies. They have to be prohibited or restricted through a law and a policy. Whereas the law should encourage innovation which can benefit mankind. AI tools which can increase our efficiency, which can contribute to the economy, which can simplify our lives, which can help solve crime. Such AI technologies have to be promoted. We have to encourage research and development. So the prohibition, restrictions, and regulations should not curb innovation. And at the same time, it doesn't mean we should allow the creation of harmful, hazardous technologies. That should be tackled very strictly. So it's a conflict. So we need to find a balance between the two. A fine balance between promoting research and innovation while restricting and prohibiting harmful AI technologies. So this is the balance that has been achieved by New Delhi Declaration. It has called upon countries to ensure that AI benefits societies, benefits mankind. We should ensure that AI respects human rights and democratic values, which is critical for modern civilization, right? While safeguarding dignity, privacy, promoting data protection, protecting intellectual property. These are the priorities highlighted by the New Delhi Declaration, and it has given a call for development of sustainable, inclusive, accessible AI technologies. Because AI should not be restricted to rich countries, and powerful people. It should benefit even the poor countries, the poor people as well. It should be inclusive. It shouldn't cause environmental damage. It should be sustainable. It should be accessible to everyone. So these principles have been laid out under the New Delhi Declaration. Is that clear? It balances the need to restrict harmful technologies while promoting research and innovation. That's about New Delhi Declaration. It has identified important thematic areas, that is using AI for boosting agriculture. It's been identified as a priority sector. Under New Delhi Declaration, agriculture has been specifically pointed out as a priority theme to focus upon, which means governments will give a push to companies and research institutions to bring out AI technologies that can benefit agriculture sector specifically. All right. So these are some important points you can take away from New Delhi Declaration. It has also said that even low income and middle income countries have to be involved in AI regulation and AI promotion. Even we should help poor countries, small countries develop AI expertise, make use of AI tools. We should not leave behind any country, right? So all these principles have been adopted. So this declaration is very different from another declaration that was adopted just 1 month before in November 2023. In November 2023, the United Kingdom also hosted a conference on AI. It was held at a place called Bletchley, which is a historic place related to the World War. This is where the legendary Alan Turing, right, the legendary mathematician who broke the Enigma code of the Nazis for British intelligence, right? So at Bletchley Park, which is a historic World War related place in UK, the conference was held. All global leaders were invited by UK, and the Bletchley Declaration was adopted just 1 month before New Delhi Declaration. The Bletchley Declaration is completely on the opposite side of New Delhi Declaration. There's a big contrast between the two. Because in Bletchley Declaration, the focus was entirely on tackling AI risk. Even leaders like Elon Musk and others were invited. The whole focus of Bletchley Declaration, brought out by UK, right? Even India was a participant. India also took part. India's Minister of State for Electronics and IT, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, took part in Bletchley Conference. So all countries, they focused on tackling AI risks at Bletchley. But in New Delhi Declaration, the focus is different. It's about balancing the risk with promoting research and innovation. That is the big difference you find. In Bletchley Declaration, the entire focus was on safety, the security threats from AI, the catastrophic risk that might arise, which can destroy humanity, which can potentially wipe out human civilization, threaten our privacy. Those alarming risks were the focus of Bletchley Declaration. How can we restrict such technologies, prohibit them? How can we regulate them? That was the focus of Bletchley Declaration. But New Delhi Declaration is the other side. It's in stark contrast to it. It has struck a balance between restricting and regulating these technologies while promoting research and innovation. So these are two important global frameworks which have been brought out with regard to AI. Is that clear? One is Bletchley Declaration and second is New Delhi Declaration. Next, please take up this question. How does New Delhi Declaration on AI contrast with Bletchley Declaration? Discuss. You basically have to compare the two. Coming to the seventh topic, India and ASEAN have agreed to revise their free trade agreement. This is another important topic. It's still a developing story. So I'll just give you the update, but we can discuss this later once FTA is actually revised. See, India ASEAN, we had signed a FTA many years ago. For example, India ASEAN countries, we have been working very closely with each other since 1992, since the Look East policy was launched. ASEAN, I hope you know, it's a grouping of Southeast Asian countries. It's a political economic grouping. There are 10 Southeast Asian countries which are part of ASEAN. You have Myanmar, Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, then Laos, Thailand, right? Brunei. All these countries are part of ASEAN group. 10 Southeast Asian countries are part of it. So under Look East policy, we gave a lot of attention to Southeast Asia. We built close ties with ASEAN countries. And finally, we signed a free trade agreement. We started the negotiations for an FTA in 2003. And finally, in 2009, we signed a trade in goods agreement. Basically, it would remove the barriers to trade. The duties were reduced. Logistical policy issues were sorted so that there could be free flow of goods between India and ASEAN region. So with this, the trade volume picked up. It benefited both the sides. Indian exports to ASEAN increased, ASEAN exports to India also increased. In 2015, we signed another agreement which as part of the FTA, which dealt with trade in services and investments. So all aspects of trade were covered under this FTA. An agreement for trade in goods, right? Physical goods. Another agreement for services and investments. This was part of the India-ASEAN FTA. But India noticed that the FTA was not well negotiated. There were certain shortcomings in it, which was benefiting ASEAN countries more. Because of the FTA, there was a free flow of ASEAN goods into India, which led to cheap imports into the Indian market, like cheap coconut products, cheap coffee, cheap automobile components, electronic appliances. They flooded the Indian market, which has harmed Indian producers. Indian farmers, Indian MSME industry has been hit because of cheaper imports coming from ASEAN countries. So that has been a concern for India. We want to plug the gap. And the other issue is that third parties are misusing the FTA route, because in this FTA, there is no rules of origin requirement. If rules of origin requirement is there, then the benefit of FTA will be available only to those goods produced in that region. Like there will be a value addition target. All right, let's say a commodity from ASEAN has to be exported to India with FTA benefit, with low duties or zero duty. The exporter has to prove that the commodity was largely produced in ASEAN region. At least minimum value addition has to be done. What if from a third country, let's say from China, an exporter brings the goods into ASEAN and tries to benefit from the FTA to flood Chinese products to India? You can't keep a check without rules of origin. You should know where the product is coming from, where the value addition is taking place. This FTA is only for India-ASEAN. It should benefit only Indian producers, exporters, and traders, and ASEAN producers, traders, and exporters. Third parties cannot misuse this. But this was happening because there was no rules of origin requirement. Meaning there was no mandate for exporters to prove where the product was coming from. No minimum value addition criteria. So even a product from China could be brought to ASEAN because China, ASEAN have a FTA. So there is a free trade route. So Chinese goods can come to ASEAN market easily. From there, it can flood into India, thereby flooding Chinese products into India. This is a concern for us. We have created trade barriers with China to prevent China's products from flooding our market. China is known to dump cheap products on Indian market to destroy our domestic producers. So India was really worried that we don't have a rules of origin requirement to block the third party traders and exporters. Right? There was no review provision. ASEAN countries were not agreeing for it. So after years of negotiation under Act East policy, which is an upgraded version of Look East policy, India has convinced ASEAN that we have to review the trade agreement. So now India-ASEAN have started the process, and by February 2024, we are expected to come out with a reviewed and renewed version of the FTA. All right. So this is the update. Just take note of this. We'll discuss this again. Of course, it will come up again because the FTA will be updated, and we will get to know the details as to what clauses have been added, what checks and balances have been added to protect Indian market and to protect Indian producers and manufacturers. All right. So this is why India-ASEAN FTA is important. Take a mains question. Examine the concerns related to India-ASEAN FTA. Very easy. First, give the background in the introduction. Talk about India-ASEAN FTA, the history, the background. Then, what are the issues? In the body, you can explain that it benefited both sides initially, but later we saw that there was a flood of ASEAN products affecting Indian producers. And we also saw third parties were misusing it, especially from China. Traders and companies, they were bringing their goods into India through ASEAN indirectly. Right? And they were flooding the Indian market, thus harming Indian farmers and Indian industries. These are the concerns we have. No rules of origin requirement, no review was done. So we want a review to be done. We want rules of origin requirement to be added. And we want measures in place so we can block any harmful imports into the country. If cheap imports are flooding and harming our domestic industries, we should have a provision where we can block them out. So that is what India will bring up, and we'll try to include this in the revised FTA. Coming to the last topic related to India-Myanmar. Indian officials have said that the free movement regime which we had with Myanmar is likely to come to an end. So what is this? What is this free movement regime and why are we ending it? That's the last point, and we'll close the discussion for tonight. See, India and Myanmar share a very long boundary. It's around 1,643 kilometers long. It's a critical boundary for us. There are many northeastern states sharing this boundary. It includes Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Manipur, and Mizoram. This border has faced a number of security concerns. It's been a porous border. There have been organized criminals who have easily infiltrated from the other side, bringing drugs and weapons into India. Northeast insurgents have crossed over into Myanmar, taken shelter on the other side in Myanmar. So essentially, the porous border has enabled organized crime, insurgency, infiltration, etc. So securing this border has always been a concern for India and even for Myanmar. But at the same time, we can't ignore the local tribes present here. Because in Northeast India, there are many hill tribes which are closely connected to tribes on the other side in Myanmar. They have ethnic connections, cultural, historical connections. So to keep them closer, to maintain their cultural ties and to promote local border trade, to support the border economy, an easy movement regime was created called the Free Movement Regime. Is that clear? It was arranged in 1970s and it was revised in 2016. What was the idea? The idea was we'll create an easy movement process, an easy visa process. So some of the tribes present near the border, within certain distance from the border, they can easily cross to Myanmar, and from Myanmar they can come to India. Why? Because they have familial ethnic relations. They would like to visit their families on the other side, maintain their cultural familial bonds. Traders would like to cross and exchange their goods to support the local economy, the border economy. This is a livelihood for the local tribes as well. So to support the cultural economic interests of the tribes here near the border, this regime was started. It is there from 1970s, but it was revised and upgraded in 2016. According to the regime, those hill tribes residing within 16 kilometers on both sides of the border, they can cross to the other side without a visa. They don't need a visa. They just have to get a border pass, usually issued for 1 year. A separate border pass was issued. Those from the tribal community, they have to give the documents to prove that they are a hill tribe and they reside within 16 kilometers. So they have to give their address proof, their Aadhaar and other documents to prove that they are a tribal community, they're from the tribal community, right? And they are residing, their house has to be within 16 kilometers from the border. So those people will be given a border pass from both countries. India will give it for Indians, Myanmar will give it for Myanmarese citizens. They can use the border pass to travel to the other side. It will be valid for 1 year. They don't need a visa. So Myanmar citizens can come to India for 1 year. They don't need an Indian visa. Indians can go to Myanmar without a visa only if they are from a hill tribe in the border area residing within 16 kilometers of the border. This was a very important initiative, an economic cultural initiative. But unfortunately, the last 2 years have been dangerous, the last 2-3 years. Because in 2021, Myanmar's military toppled the elected government and snatched the power again. A military coup was witnessed. The military has captured power and declared an emergency. This has led to a civil war in Myanmar. Opposition groups and ethnic insurgent groups, they've all declared war against Myanmar's military and the violence has increased. Myanmar's military crushed the rebellion, killing civilians, triggering a refugee crisis. Thousands of refugees have flown into Manipur and Mizoram, putting the refugee burden on India because many communities are connected. Like, for example, the Mizos in Mizoram are connected with the Chin community of Myanmar. The Kukis of Manipur are also connected with the Chin Zo ethnic group of Myanmar. So out of humanitarian concern, Manipur, Mizoram started accepting the refugees, turning this into a refugee problem for India. And now in the last 1 to 2 years, the crisis in Manipur, the ethnic violence in Manipur has been linked with the Kuki Chinzo community. The Metis of Manipur, who clashed with the Kuki-Zo community recently, causing this disaster in Manipur, they have blamed the Kuki-Zo refugees who have come from Myanmar for creating the tensions between the communities. Manipur's government, in fact, suspended the free movement regime. It has stopped the free movement regime, citing these security concerns. Manipur's chief minister had connected the ethnic violence and tensions in the state to the free movement of people from across the border. He had urged the MHA to stop the free movement regime. So now that the security risks have gone up, because now you might have seen, we studied in the last webinar as well, the rebels in Myanmar have gained the upper hand. They have targeted the military, they have captured many areas, strategic areas towards the Indian border and Chinese border, and Myanmar's military is on the back foot. It has lost many areas from its control. So more refugees are flowing into India. So this could lead to many new problems in Manipur, Mizoram, maybe in Nagaland and Arunachal Pradesh. It could further enable cross-border movement of insurgents and organized crime, which is all a security threat for India. So given the complex situation, the Indian government is deciding it's looking to stop the free movement regime. It's not done it yet. It's not happened yet, but it is all set to do it. Reports are indicating, right? Government officials have informed some media houses, it's a very credible report, that free movement regime might be stopped. It might be completely stopped between India and Myanmar, meaning this visa-free movement within 16 kilometers will be stopped entirely on security grounds. So this is the last topic that you had to cover, that you had to understand. So please take up a possible mains question on this. Should India revoke the free movement regime along the border owing to security concerns? Discuss. See, the drawback is that if we withdraw this regime, stop this movement, it could harm the economic ties and the familial ties and the cultural relationship, which is crucial in our diplomatic ties. Correct? There are both pros and cons to it. So you just have to discuss that, present your argument while writing this answer. So with this, I complete my discussion and I conclude today's session. Just give me a couple of minutes to look at some questions and doubts, and after that, we can end the session completely. So let's take a look at some doubts, some questions which are remaining. Vritika is asking how AI can be useful in agriculture. See, AI, my dear, can be used in any domain, in any technology. Today, there's something called smart agriculture, where the growth of a plant is monitored by sensors. Watering, irrigation is controlled by sensors, by computers. So with AI, you can revolutionize agriculture. You can take weather forecasting data to automate the application of fertilizers, pesticides, nutrients. Essentially, AI can transform any industry, any sector, and especially agriculture can benefit. Smart agriculture can be automated with AI. Harish is asking how AI can affect human civilization. See, AI can have a lot of risks for human safety. For example, what if AI tools are used to enable the stealing of sensitive data? It's already happening. There are malwares which are being designed by cyber criminals, which are built on machine learning neural network models, which are self-learning models. They can harvest so much data and launch targeted attacks to break into your systems and steal sensitive information. They can use deep fake technology, right? Fake videos and audio files created to extract ransom, to threaten people, to mislead the public, to disrupt security in a country, to instigate riots. So a lot of misuse is possible through AI tools. There is a big risk for, with regard to facial recognition technology. What if the AI algorithm is not well designed? What if it has a bias? Because it's all dependent on what data it is fed with, right? If the data itself is biased, then AI tools like facial recognition tools, which are used by police and law enforcement, they could show a bias against religious minorities, racial, ethnic minorities, and they could be targeted, right? Their human rights could be violated. It will perpetuate the biases that already exist in the society, right? So that is a major concern. And in a worst case scenario, there is a possibility, however far-fetched, even though it's a stuff of sci-fi movies, there is a possibility, a theoretical possibility, where AI tools become more powerful than humans, where AI tools can take over, and that could be a potential threat, a catastrophic threat to human civilization itself. So all these risks are being considered. That's why many experts are flagging them, not just the basic risks to privacy, security, etc., right? But even a potential catastrophic event. AI will be used in warfare. It's already being used in warfare, right? And there are no rules to govern that. So that is a threat to human rights, to democratic values, and to human civilization itself. Sri Lakshmi is asking how people are crossing the Indian border. Don't we have armed forces at Myanmar border? See, please understand, the borders are so long, right? You can't have troops everywhere. It's impossible. How can you have troops everywhere along the 1,643-kilometer border, right? We will, of course, have border guarding forces. Assam Rifles is the designated border guarding force. Indian Army is also deployed in counter-insurgency role, but doesn't mean we can check every border point, right? Then the terrain is very complicated. There are rivers, mountains, dense jungles. We can't have troops everywhere. So there will be many gaps in the border which can be exploited. That is why we are considering to fence this border. There is a proposal by the Home Ministry to install a border fence, at least in some stretches, just like we have done with the Pakistani border and the Bangladeshi border. Vivek is asking, can UN peacekeeping forces be utilized to stop Houthis? No. Again, see, UN peacekeeping forces, if they have to be deployed, it has to be approved by UN Security Council, which means all 5 permanent members have to agree. They have to vote. If one vetoes the resolution, UN peacekeeping forces cannot be deployed. And since Houthis are Iranian proxies, Russia, China will never support it. Is that clear? So UN peacekeeping forces cannot be deployed here because it's practically not possible. Shubham is asking, an initiative of India and Russia to develop a North Sea route would be an alternative route to tackle situations like the one in Bab el-Mandeb Strait? Yes. At least with Russia, we are working on alternate shipping routes. There is a route to connect Chennai with Vladivostok via Strait of Malacca, right? But that will only benefit India and Russia, right? It will create an alternate shorter route between India and Russia. But we can't replace the Bab el-Mandeb route because geography can't be entirely changed. We can make some changes, come out with new initiatives, new projects, new routes. But Bab el-Mandeb and Red Sea route is such that we can't find an alternative to that. It is critical because Europe is a massive market to India. West Asia, Africa, they are massive markets for India. North America is a massive market. The only route through which we can reach all these markets is through Red Sea. The other route via Africa, around Africa, is a longer route. Cost will be high, time will be high, right? So this is the only viable route for us for other markets. All right. So guys, these are some of the questions. I hope it was a good, interesting session. I hope you've understood everything. Do let me know how the session went. These are 8 detailed topics. We have to cover them in detail. That's why I always take 15-20 minutes extra. So let me know how the session went. I hope everything is clear. If you have any doubts, reach out to us. We're always there to get back and help you out. So that is it for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.